welcome to Tibra's Den, everyone. My name is Whitney, and welcome to another CAS Monday. Today, we are doing different supernatural creatures in honor of Halloween. First up is our Banshee. She wants to have a successful lineage. She's gloomy. She's a drama queen, and she's a loner. And I basically gave her those traits because I looked up the different legends regarding these different supernatural beings. And for the Banshee, she comes from Irish folklore, and she heralds in the death of a family member by screeching or wailing. And so that's why I gave her the successful lineage traits. She's depicted as having red eyes and crying all the time, and that's because she doesn't necessarily want to herald in her family's death, but she knows when they're gonna die, and so she wants her family to succeed in life and live. And then she's gloomy and a drama queen since she does well and screech, and then she's also a bit of a loner as well. And so for her, I really liked how she turned out. You can see I made her extremely pale. The hair I wasn't happy with at first, but once I finished her, and especially seeing her in game and in the little house I created for her, I absolutely loved how she turned out. So at first I really wanted like straighter hair and longer hair, and I know, this hair kind of gives it more texture with the waves, but at first, like I said, I was really wanting straight and long, but I really didn't have anything that fit the bill that wasn't like put up or anything like that. And so I ended up going with this hair, and then for her makeup, I did find it's under vampire makeup, but it just adds red underneath her eyes. And I thought about trying to do some tears in red, but I just didn't like the way it looked. Like they were a bit too much for me. And so I just went with the under eye red there, and I really liked how that looked. And then for her lips, I added like a kind of blackish gray tint to them, just kind of adds to that feeling of death for her. And then I also found some eyes for her that I absolutely love. It just kind of adds a film over it, but you can kind of still see the pupil and the iris and such underneath these eyes right here. And I absolutely loved how they looked on her, and it just adds that kind of spooky death feeling to her. And so that's what I ended up going with. And I kept her makeup and her clothes the same across all the looks. I really felt that she wouldn't change based on different events. She's not really a part of the human world. She is, who her character is. And so she's a banshee. She doesn't, interact with the Sims other than to herald in a family member's death. So I might add a relationship to different family members later. But here I named her, I'm not sure how to pronounce it, so I apologize in advance, but Abel or Abel O'Brien, and that's because that banshee was thought to be the O'Brien banshee, and she also ruled over up to 25 other banshees, and so that's why I went with that name, because it was part of the history and the legend. And there's some other names in there, but I know I can't pronounce those, so I'm not even going to try. And now we are on to our succubus, and for her, I ended up doing all her different outfits, and I didn't give her like any occult, and I didn't do the banshee as an occult either, but I'm going to go in and give the banshee like the immortal, and so she won't die or anything like that. And I might even turn her into a ghost and then, have her as part of the household as a ghost. I really haven't decided quite what I'm going to do, but I'm definitely going to go in with all these guys and add certain traits to them. And so for the succubus here, I made her a young adult. She's a serial romantic, she's vain, she has the romantic trait, and then she's also self-assured. And just basically with the history, the succubus is thought to be a demon or supernatural entity that manifests itself as a beautiful woman and seduces men. She comes into their dreams, and repeat interactions damages men's physical, mental health, and can lead to death if she repeatedly interacts with them. And there was different lore on what she looks like, and it really varied. And so I went with a beautiful woman, but pretty much everything described her as voluptuous, and just very beautiful. And so that's what I went with. And my husband was kind of offering input on her and was like, well, it just depends on what the man finds beautiful as to what she looks like. So for her, I kind of went off some of my husband's input, and so the hair and some of the clothes was kind of like, I don't like that, so but I still kind of went with what I thought was beautiful as well. And so this is her. And the hair, I was debating between two different hairstyles, which you will see here in a second. This one, and then there's another one that I do, it's like red, this one right here, that I was really debating between. And I like this color red, but the hair, I went with the other hair because my husband liked this other hair better. And I did not like the red in the other hair. And so I ended up going with like a brown. I thought it really complemented her skin tone and looked really pretty on her. And so that's what I ended up going with instead of the red or like the black or anything like that. I just went with, I mean, it's a very pretty brown, but it is just kind of a classic brown color there. And then for her eyebrows, I kind of kept that high arch look that was already there. And I did different makeup looks for all of her different outfits, but one is a very bold red lip. I went with a red lip for most of her outfits. For her like athletic wear and her swimwear, I kind of muted down the makeup because I figured, she wouldn't necessarily, she would definitely still wear makeup, but she would want it to look like she wasn't wearing makeup, if that makes sense, since those are activities you generally don't wear makeup. And then for her bedtime look, she does have fairly heavy makeup, as she goes to seduce the men, and so you'll see that here in a second. But right now I'm just going through and adding all the details to each look, just, her eyes and her eyelashes and such, just because unfortunately when those custom contents are in the makeup category, they don't transfer over to each look, and so you have to go through. And so I like to do it right away, and so I don't forget anything. And I went with kind of like a violety red eye for her. I didn't want it too over the top. Some miss, have her with glowing eyes, but for her eye color, I didn't want it too over the top, since she is just a regular sim. She just happens to seduce men. And so right here, I'm just working on her makeup for her everyday look. And like I said, I love the red lip on her. I think that would be a good classic trait of a succubus or a succubi. And so that's kind of what I went with for a lot of her looks. And then for her outfits, I again tried to stick to kind of the red and black color scheme. And I really like this here, but I didn't like that you couldn't layer like pants or something over it. I actually end up using that on my spider sim, and so you'll see that outfit make a return, but I just really didn't like that you couldn't layer anything over it, and so I ended up scrapping that and just going with like a top, and I went with some like high-waisted jeans, like skinny jeans, just really kind of dressed her up, and things that accentuated her body well. And because I debated between skirts and like short shorts and such, but I would think she would like the jeans that really accentuate her curves, and the shirt kind of shows off her shoulders and her chest area a little bit, and then little bit of a midriff, not too over the top, but she's definitely sending out all the signals, I would say. And for her, the thing I actually struggled with the most was her shoes. I struggled with them on this outfit and her party outfit, and then her hot weather wear. Like, I just struggled with her shoes all over the place, and I debated between boots and heels, and I ran through it all. But for her everyday look, I ended up going with those heels, but once I get to her party look, I end up flip-flopping on them again, but I do end up with the heels in the end, so that's what I ended up going with. And then for her formal look, again, very form-fitting, shows off all her curves, very beautiful, and of course in the classic red as well. And then I gave her some jewelry and her makeup, again a very bold red lip and blush and everything like that. And I actually forgot to give her jewelry on this look, so I go back and I give her some red hoops and a little choker there for her look, because I realized I forgot to do that. And then for her formal look, I just give her a little bit of earrings. It was hard because I wanted red earrings, but none of them matched the red in the dress quite right. And so I ended up going with these little silver earrings that kind of dangle. I really liked how they looked. And then again with her blush and, like I said, a bold lip, and then just kind of a smoky eye. Nothing too over the top, but she definitely draws the look to her lips, I would say. And I almost went with this lip here, kind of a little bit more understated, but I thought no, she would be bold. She would go bold all the way. And then for her athletic wear, I still did makeup. I just tried to make it look a little bit understated, like she wasn't. She was trying to look like she wasn't wearing makeup, even though she was. So very basic on that. And then for her outfit itself, I don't see her as a type that goes to the gym or does yoga or anything like that. If she's doing any physical exercise, it's to impress a guy. And so I ended up going with this tank top here and some skinny jeans and then some boots. And that's because I figured, maybe the guy she's trying to seduce is really into hiking, and so she goes hiking with them, and this is her version of an outfit that you would wear to go hiking. She's not very physically active, let's say. Even though, she's very beautiful, her looks kind of just come naturally to her. So she doesn't feel like she needs to work out or anything like that. She saves all her energy for seducing men, essentially. So this is the look I came up with, and then I just go through a few different boots, trying to find which boots I like the best for her. But like I said, she definitely plays up what she has. So, but I just love her, and we'll see on Friday. I do her house. Like, I try to stay with the red theme as much as possible, kind of red and black. And you'll see on Friday her house is very red as well and very romantic looking. Like, she plays up what she got, and she's out to seduce all the men. So, and for her sleepwear, I went really heavy on the makeup just because I figured she would definitely play up her looks in the bedroom for sure. So she has lingerie, and she's definitely wearing the makeup to bed. She would probably be the type, she's more like one night stand type, but she would definitely, maybe take off her makeup after the guy has fallen asleep, or she would leave and then go home and take off her makeup, if for some reason she stayed the night, she would be up before the guy to put back on her makeup. Like, she would always be well groomed in front of a man, for sure. And so for her party look here, I ended up going with this top because I really debated. I wanted to use this top for her everyday look, but I thought it was a little bit too much, and so I ended up using it for her party wear. And then I go with a skirt. I wanted to use these jeans, but I ended up going with a skirt. I liked it a little bit better, and so that's what I ended up going with. And then some sandals as well. And this is where I ended up flipping back and forth between her everyday look and the party look, trying to figure out which shoes I wanted to use, because I debated about using the shoes from her everyday look for this outfit, but it just really didn't go, and so I ended up giving those back to her everyday look. And I found some like wedge sandals that I ended up using for this look, that I think work pretty well. And I thought about the fringe sandals or the heels again, and I just didn't quite like how it looked. And then boots, like I said, shoes is definitely what I struggled with the most on her. And I really liked the idea of boots, and these boots would have been really cute, and I don't know why I ended up not going with them. There was something about them that just didn't quite click for me. And so these are the sandals I ended up going with. But like I said, I switch back and forth a few times, between her everyday outfit and like trying them on this outfit, and then decided I didn't like them, and going back to her everyday to put them back on. Like, I just flip-flopped a lot. And then I ended up going with these sandals anyway. And I thought about tights or leggings, but I ended up not doing that. And then just some basic earrings again. And I do put on a little choker, I'm pretty sure. Yeah. This red and black one, which I really like. And then, again, some makeup with a bold red lip, as always, because she has to have that. And, her eyes again, pretty played up here, and I definitely put on some more blush. Like, she's playing up her features very much so to draw in those guys, those men. That's what she's all about. So, and now for her swim look, again, I put on makeup, but I tried to make it look like very understated. Like, I'm not really wearing makeup. She's that type of girl. And then this swimsuit I thought was absolutely perfect for her, and so I went with that swimsuit. And for her hot weather wear, again, kind of struggled trying to find what I wanted, and I ended up going with like a little tank top and some shorts, a little bit more relaxed than her other looks, I would say, but still very much showing off her body and accentuating her features. And so I ended up with this tank top, which is a custom content piece that I hadn't used yet. And then I found, I'm pretty sure they're in game, but some cut off shorts with a belt that I really liked. And so I used those. And then for her shoes, again, I struggled hardcore because I wanted something that would show off her feet but still kind of go with the summery and laid back vibe. And none of the reds, again, matched the top, which is really frustrating. And so I did find some sandals, and I go with like a black and gold since she does have the gold belt buckle. And then I do like gold eyeshadow on her, which I really liked. And so that's kind of the way I went, but you can see I'm just going through all kinds of different shoes trying to figure out which direction I want to go, and it was a struggle for sure. I don't know why I have such a hard time with her shoes, but in the end we got it done, and I do like how it turned out, and so that's all that matters. Like, and it's a little bit more satisfying, I think, having such a hard time with her, having it come together. So I went with these sandals in gold, and so that way it kind of plays off the belt and then plays off her eyeshadow and everything like that. And I have the little gold earrings, and I do a little gold necklace with L for Lilith, and just very pretty and simple for the summer. Like I said, in the heat, she's not going too over the top, because I'm sure even though she's a succubus, the heat probably gets to her a little bit as well. And as always, her bold red lips definitely had to go with that. And then for her cold weather outfit, I kind of struggled here as well. The shirt was what I struggled with the most, because I couldn't decide. I knew she would still want to show off her body, and I really like this look here with the sweater off one shoulder, but I didn't like the sweater itself, and so I ended up not going. This is the tank top I ended up going with a little cover over it, just her version of cold weather look. And there was a couple like different like crop sweaters that I thought would work well, but they were just not in the right color, so I ended up not using those either, even though they would have worked perfectly. They weren't in the right colors. And so that was really frustrating as well, because I really wanted to stick with the red and black theme, but it wasn't looking right. And then I kind of like this look here too, but it was a little bit not her style, a little bit too much fabric, I think, for her. So I ended up going with that tank top and some skinny jeans, and then some boots for sure. I was finally able to use the boots. I thought nothing else, I could use them for cold weather. They work for that, and so that's what I ended up going with. And then of course for her makeup, again, amped up the blush a lot, especially since it's cold, and red lips, everything like that. And I gave her the little silver hoops and everything, just to kind of, again, play up her looks and add that little bit of jewelry. So, but I thought about giving her a hat, and it looked really cute on her, but I just ended up scrapping it. I didn't really like it overall. I didn't think it matched with the top or anything like that. So that is my succubus, and like I said, I did name her Lilith Succubi, since she is considered the mother of all succubi. And that is her. That's it for her. And now we are on to our siren. And for our siren, I made her, she is a music lover. She's a musical genius is her aspiration. She's a music lover. She's a child of the ocean. and she's self-absorbed. I give her that trait because even though she lures in the sailors and everything, she doesn't really want them there. You know, it's all about luring them in. And so that's why I gave her the self-absorbed trait. I did make her a mermaid. There's two different kind of legends for the siren. You have like the bird-like legend, and then later on came the woman with the tail of the fish and the beautiful mermaid legend. So of course, if I was able to, I would have gone the whole bird-like route, but that really wasn't feasible overall. And so you'll see I do give her in her human form here, I do give her like scales. They're supposed to be snake scales, but I think they work for either a mermaid or a bird type scales. Either way, it looks really cool on her. So that's what I ended up doing for her everyday look. And her everyday look is the same across the board. Like, I didn't, again, she's very set in myth. She's not interacting with the sim world at all. And so I really stuck with that route, and I did not change for, you know, different events like formal or sleepwear or anything like that. I did this look and then her mermaid look. And so you can see the scales here. Like I said, those were supposed to be for snake scales, but I thought it looked really cool for her as well. And I really like play up her looks because even in her human form, she can't quite shed, you know, her mythological form at all. And so this is what I went with across the board, and I really, really like how she turned out. And then for her hair, I found it kind of gives me like Velocity of Atlantis vibes. You'll see when I get to it. But I absolutely loved it, and so that's what I ended up going with. And I like this hair here too, but I'm glad I didn't use the shorter hair because I ended up using it for another sim that works perfectly. So this is the hair I ended up going with, and plus the little braids in the front just kind of reminded me of feathers for some reason. And so I really, really liked that hair on her, and so that's the hair I ended up going with. And I really debated about a necklace, but I ended up scrapping that. I think I give it to her in her mermaid form, but I don't keep it in this form, obviously. But I really liked how she turned out, and then, you know, I have to give her, of course, her different makeup looks. And I like these lashes here because they kind of look like feathers fanning out, and so I thought that was a cool aspect. Because I normally don't use those lashes because they're a little bit too much, but I thought for her they actually worked perfectly, and I really liked them. And then I struggled with her eyes a little bit, but I ended up going with this kind of blue and a little bit more human looking in this form. And then for her mermaid, I definitely amp up the creep factor on that, and then I give her the face makeup there, which I really liked, and then some blue lips, of course, because why wouldn't you, right? So I think she looks really cool. So even in her human form, there's definitely something very mythical about her. But I definitely play that up in her mermaid form, I would say. But I wanted, like I said, I had a lot of fun with her, and I still wanted that kind of mythical element in her human form, just maybe not quite as scary as in her mermaid form. And even her mermaid form's really not scary, but I definitely play up the mythical element for sure in her mermaid form. But I really like how she turned out, and I found her interesting when I was researching her because I knew the Legend of the Siren from the Odyssey and such, but there's actually several different versions, which I didn't realize how many different versions there were about the sirens and how in depth that myth and legend is. And so I found that really interesting. And there's an aspect of like the three different gods and her collecting the sailors for the three different gods. And one of those is giving back to the oceans. I can't quite remember. I didn't write it down in my notes, but that's something I really found interesting. So, you know, definitely I would encourage you guys to go look up the different legends because it's pretty cool. And then I found these scales in when I was downloading a bunch of custom content, and so I gave those to her in this form, and then I kind of went a little bit more creepy on her eyes in this form as well. Not too different from in her human form, but the pupils are a little bit different and such. And I really like these tears, but I ended up not going with them even though I really liked them. I don't know. It was a little bit too much, I guess, and so I ended up not going with them, even though I really, really liked them. So that's a shame. But there's the necklace. I do end up using it in this form, and then I find her body tattoos, which I love, and I put them in white, and so they really stand out. And she is so cool. Like, I absolutely love her. I love them all apparently, but that's good. It's good that I'm happy with what I created. And I almost forgot to name her, but I named her. I don't know how to pronounce this, so I'm sorry. But the Lexipia, I have no clue how to pronounce it. And then I just gave her, who's rumored to be her father, I gave her that last name. And I did that because that was the most agreed upon name upon, throughout all the different legends. So that's what I did. And then this here is Arachne, and I gave her last name of her father as well, Idman. And so for her, I made her a teenager, and I love the legend behind her. So I didn't know, like, I knew, the spidery woman legend from different TV shows and such, but I didn't know the story behind it, and I absolutely loved the story behind it. So it actually comes from Roman mythology, which I know I should know this, and the poet Ovid. And so she was the talented daughter of Idmon, and she challenged Athena to a weaving contest. And Athena became enraged when she couldn't find any flaws, and she ended up beating the girl with one of her weaving tool things. And so Arachne ended up hanging herself, and Athena brought her back as a spider. And so for her, I made her the Lady of the Knits, and I made her creative, and then gave her the diva trait, and that's because she was very boastful, and even though she had a right to be proud of her work, she was very boastful and not humble about it at all, and that's what got her into trouble with Athena. And so that's why I ended up giving her the diva trait. But most of the custom content I found actually worked really, really well for her. So I had found all these spider jewelry and a bunch of spider web like clothing and such. And so it worked perfect for her. And I love how she turned out. And when I was creating her, she was probably the one that creeped me out the most. Those eyes just really, really creeped me out. And I have I'm fascinated by spiders, but I definitely have a phobia of them at the same time. Like, I love watching like different tarantula content on YouTube. Like, those are some of my favorite videos. I follow The Dark Den and Tarantula Cat, are my two favorite ones that I follow and I watch. And so I have like this fascination with them, but spiders definitely creep me out, and I think her eyes and everything, they're so creepy. But these leggings were perfect, that dress was perfect, and then I used these gloves. I used those all the way around. Like, she is so cool, and I absolutely love her so much. And she was a lot of fun to create, I would say. And I actually ended up using this dress for her hot weather look as well. Even though I was able to find a lot of content, I was kind of limited on what went with the spider theme, so I ended up doing this again for her hot weather look, but I do just switch up the jewelry a little bit. And then for her formal look, I think I'll go with not this dress, the dress before, because I come back to it a couple times, and I think that's what I ended up going with. I can't remember for sure if I found something that I liked a little bit better or not, but I'm pretty sure this is the one I ended up going with. Yeah, because I'm onto shoes now. So, and the shoes you really can't see, so I didn't really focus too much on those. And then again, I give her jewelry, of course, which you will see in a second. The gloves, the nails. Like, I had to do it all. And her ring, I give her that ring on all her outfits. Like, her gloves and her ring and her nails are standard, like, throughout all the outfits. And then for this, I went with the little spiders. And the little spiders I try to use for like her sleepwear, swimming, things where you wouldn't necessarily have dingly earrings. That's where I went with the little spiders. And then the same thing with the choker too. I went with that with more with things that you wouldn't necessarily have something dangly. And then the long necklace, I went with outfits that you would utilize that with more. And so this is where I used this little bodysuit again. I know I wanted to use it on the succubus, but I did not. And so I used it for her workout outfit, and I think it works out really well. So I give her the tights again, and then I give her her gloves and her ring. And for the shoes, I ended up going with like sandals, and I'm not really sure why. Like, cause it worked with the tights. These sandals right there, I ended up going back to them. It worked with the tights, but it really doesn't make sense for workout outfits. So I'm not entirely sure what I was thinking there, but that's what I ended up going with. So that's her workout outfit, and then for her sleepwear, I went with this dress. There's no spider webs, but I liked like the film over it, and so that's why I ended up going with that. And then of course I give her her gloves, her nails, her ring again, and I tried to give her the choker, but it messed with the choker on her neck, and so I ended up not doing that. But I give her like the little spider earrings, so that worked out. And of course the tights as well, so she still has that spidery aspect, and it still has the black and goes along with that. And then for her party look, I give her the dangly earrings and the dangly necklace, and I do this dress, which is probably my favorite dress out of the whole batch of custom content I got. I think it is so adorable, and it works really, really well for her. Again, I struggled a little bit with the shoes. I think I go with these sandals here because, again, they kind of work with the tights a little bit, and it's not too glaringly obvious that it's weird. And then for her swimsuit, I ended up going with this little bodysuit thing. Still has the spider webs, not an actual swimsuit, but underneath kind of looks like a swimsuit, and then she has the spider webs covering over the top. So I really like that. So again, for her hot weather wear, I kind of looked through, but I couldn't find anything, so I ended up going with the dress from her everyday look. And again, everything else is the same. Pretty easy to create her because of that, because I just went and gave her, you know, the same look overall, and then I just kind of switched up her jewelry up top. So I gave her the spider web earrings instead, and then I did the long necklace. So I really like her. Like I said, and then for her cold weather, I give her the long earrings, but the choker necklace. And I actually went with the dress you'll see here, and I did that because, not this dress, there's another one, it's coming, this one right here, and I did that because it kind of looked like a tapestry, and since it had the longer sleeves, I figured it did kind of work for cold weather, and so that's why I ended up doing that. And of course I still had her gloves and her ring and everything like that, but I absolutely love how she turned out. And again, I gave her her father's name as her last name, just kind of go along with that myth and that legend. So now we are on to my Grim Reaper, and I actually messed up when I was creating her, because when I was doing my research, I knew I wanted to go with a female, and so I was looking at the different cultures and such, and I decided to go with the Mexican version because where I live, I'm very close to the border, and a lot of people celebrate Dia de los Muertos. And so I'm sorry if I butchered that. I'm horrible with pronunciation, but I decided that's perfect, and it's actually, there's already a lot of items, not a lot, but a fair amount of items in the Sims games. There's the sugar skulls, there's the Katrina doll, there's the face paint, and so I was like, that's perfect, I'll go that route, and then I'll have my female Grim Reaper, and it just all works out. But by the time I got here, I forgot that, and so I did all this work trying to start to create her as a female Grim Reaper, and totally forgot what I had originally planned to go with until I found, I think it's when I found the skeleton costume that I had found, and I was like, oh yeah, I was going to go with that route. I was going to create La Calvera Katrina. Sorry again if I butchered that. I'm horrible with pronunciation, even in my own language. So, and so I did all this work pretty much for nothing, and then I remembered what I was originally going to do. Um, and so I do give her this hair, and I think that transfers over to her final form as well. But all her makeup and everything, I ended up scrapping. And I found this cool custom content that actually turns them into a skeleton. And I really, really like that. But I ended up not using it just because I couldn't get the look quite right. You know, her face and everything was very skeletal. And so I ended up not doing that. I do the makeup from The Sims 4, the game makeup for the Day of the Dead. And I ended up doing, like, the dress you'll see kind of has skulls and it's kind of black and red, and seems like it fits what I was going for, and so I ended up doing that. And then of course she has her hat. She has to have her hat. And but I was so mad at myself because I did all this work and I really liked how she was starting to look, but then I forgot my original plan, and so I went through all her different outfits to put in all the makeup, and I just ended up having to scrap it all. So that was a little bit frustrating. But again, for her, I don't change her outfits. She has the same outfits for everything, just because, again, I thought, she's very, this is her character, this is who she is. She wouldn't change, for a formal event or anything like that. But one thing I didn't know when I was doing my research that I found interesting was the face comes from because she was wanting to look like the French women, so she was trying to pale her skin down, and that's why the whole white face came into play. And I didn't know that, and so that's why I gave her the curator, so she's collecting souls. I gave her vain because she's very vain and is trying to look like the French women. I gave her non-committal and a loner because she's collecting the souls, but she's not, keeping them or anything like that. She's collecting them and taking them to where they need to be. But this is the custom content piece that I found, and I love it, and I might do something later on with this custom content piece because it is so perfect, but she didn't have the full makeup face, and I just didn't like that aspect of it. And so I ended up, and I couldn't dress her, otherwise either. And so I ended up not going that route. And I found the face paint here, and so I used that. And then you'll see the dress I find. And I had this custom content too, but it didn't look right. Like, it looked too pajama-y, and I didn't like it. And so I ended up not going that route either. But I give her hat back, and then I do find the little dress, and I do change her skin tone a little bit to make it match the culture a little bit better. But I can't believe I had totally forgot that this was the route I was going with, and I absolutely love it. And her house, come back Friday, because her house is by far my favorite. I created like this little portal area where she sends the souls on their way. And so definitely check back because I love how that turned out. But this is the dress I ended up going with. It has the skulls and it kind of has that Spanishy feel to it. And so I go with that, and then just some boots there for her. And like I said, I do that outfit all the way across the board for her. And so that is her look. And I love her. And then I gave her the name, the Mexican name, the La Calvera Katrina. I know I probably butchered that, and I'm so sorry. But that's the name I ended up giving her as well, just to kind of go with that cultural aspect. So I hope I did a good job on her, and I hope I didn't offend anybody too much by butchering the pronunciation. But now we are on to my boys here, and so the first one up is Jin. And I spelled it this way because the D was actually added on later in the original legends and such. It was spelled this way, so that's why I ended up doing that. But I named him Jin D, so I add the D for his last name. And its origin is pre-Islamic Arabian, and then later it does show up in Islamic mythology and theology. So they're not considered innately good or evil, but they are often lumped together with like devils and demons and are held responsible for like misfortune, possession, and disease. But sometimes they are also considered to be supported and benevolent. So it was kind of hard to create him because I didn't know which route I wanted to go. And so I ended up going kind of like a mischievous route with him. And so I made him Chief of Mischief. He's sarcastic, he is self assured, and he's a little bit mean. Like some of his mischievousness errs on the mean side, but he's not evil. And so that's kind of the distinction. And I wanted to give him hair because I knew my Wendigo would be bald, and I didn't want him too closely linked to my Wendigo. And I did make him a spellcaster. I thought that was an important part of creating a djinn since they're closely tied to genies, kind of. A lot of people consider them very similar, and so that's why I wanted to make him a spellcaster. But I really wanted to give him hair, and it just didn't work. Like the more I looked at it, I just didn't like it. And like this hair I liked in particular, and I'm glad I didn't use that hair because I've been trying to use that hair on so many Sims. It just hasn't been working out, but it actually works out for my werewolf. So I'm glad I didn't end up using that hair here. I thought about giving him a turban, but then I didn't like that either. And so I ended up just making him bald, and it all works out just fine. And he doesn't look, you know, while there's some similarities between him and the Wendigo, they don't look all that similar, and so I was pretty happy. And then these face tattoos, I never have a chance to use those either, so I ended up using those, and then some of the more outrageous makeup that I don't really end up using a whole lot. And so I was pretty happy to be able to do that. You know, that's the fun part about doing, you know, a little bit different characters and like supernatural characters, is you can kind of go outside the box with some of the stuff you wouldn't necessarily use. And then I used these pants. I tried on a few different ones, but I ended up using these ones here just because they gave me the most genie-like vibes out of all of them. So that's what I ended up doing. And then, of course, I had to find him some tattoos. And I went through a whole bunch of them. And there were several I liked, but they didn't really go together. Like their styles were too different, and so they didn't really work with each other. And so I ended up scrapping all these tattoos, and I find a couple of the hand ones that go really nicely together, and I ended up using those instead of all the rest of the tattoos because they didn't look good together, and I didn't really like them, and so I ended up scrapping all those. And I just have the hand tattoos. And I do think I give him something on the back of the neck. I can't remember what I ended up going with, but that is my djinn. And like I said, I keep his look the same all the way across the board. And he is very simple, very easy to make. And then his house is probably my favorite as far as like color scheme and things like that. And then my Wendigo, I am pretty darn proud of this guy right here. Like you would look at him and you would think Wendigo, just like I think you would look at my Banshee and think Banshee. He definitely screams Wendigo. And so this first appeared in the First Nations of like northern Nova Scotia, the east coast of Canada, and the Great Lakes region of Canada and Wisconsin is where this story actually originated. And I'm not even going to try to say the different tribes or anything like that because I know I'll butcher them. But they were considered to be a human or a human possessed by a spirit becoming monstrous and doing acts of murder. They have insatiable greed and cannibalism. And so there's two different versions. Some people thought overly greedy people could be turned into a Wendigo, and other versions thought that they became a Wendigo by engaging in cannibalism to survive. That's how they become a Wendigo. And I think the second one's the more popular one in like mythology, like or popular culture like TV shows and such. Or there's a game, Until Dawn, I think it's called, that has the Wendigo, and that's, you know, based on cannibalism and such. So it definitely, you know, there's a little bit of conflict there, but I found it interesting because there's actual cases in history, and there's a thing called Wendigo psychosis, and a lot of tribes actually do Wendigo ceremonies during like times of where like famine or, you know, extreme cold, things like that. So I really found that interesting, and many of the Native American strongly associate it with winter, cold, famine, and starvation. And so I found the history, because I knew the Wendigo from like popular culture and such, TV shows and such, but I didn't know the history of it. So I found that pretty interesting. And so since it is associated with greed and excess, I did make him a mansion baron. I gave him the glutton. He's materialistic and he's self-absorbed are the traits I gave him. And so that's my Wendigo. And yeah, pretty happy with him. And now we are on to my werewolf. And him, I really wish I could have found more CC for him. I think I found one piece of CC, and I did find a mod that allows you to turn him into the werewolf, but for some reason it's not showing up in my game. So I'm definitely going to have to look into that a little bit more, because I also downloaded the Grim Reaper mod, but it's not showing up either. So I'm going to have to play around with that as well. But this is my werewolf, and I really wanted to do more outfits for him, because typically werewolves are considered like a part of society. Like they change on the full moon or whatever. Some of them, some legends are like purebloods and they can, you know, change at will, but most commonly, you know, they change during the full moon, and the rest of the time they're human. And so I really wanted to give them different outfits for that, but I couldn't find any, you know, that really fit. I found one outfit that was like torn and tattered, and so I ended up just going with that all across the board. I figured maybe he's, you know, gone through his clothes. He can't hold a job, and what clothes he has, he's torn through, and so this is his look now. Is the look I gave him. But I was kind of a little bit frustrated. Like, I'm happy with everything except his clothes, and I love his house too. Like, his house I absolutely love. So I ended up going with this one from Halloween. So it's all torn and ripped, and I give him like a gash on his face, which you'll see, things like that. And I gave the Wendigo nails, and I ended up deleting those because I didn't like him having those along with the werewolf. And the Wendigo, I didn't want so much nails as I wanted like his nails to be like dirty looking. And so I ended up scrapping those and going with it for just my werewolf. But here is his gash, and then I gave him kind of like the pupils are shrunk down, things like that, and I named him Lycanthropy, you know, because I wanted to tie that in as well. But that is it. I'm just going to go through their outfits real quick for you guys. And remember to check back on Friday for their houses. I absolutely love how they turned out. And again, please like this video. If you're not already, subscribe and hit the bell notifications. And we will see you guys on Friday. Have a good week, everyone. Bye.